is my country. To do good is my religion. No prophets, no priests, no Bible for me. My mind is my own church. We are all one human family, wanting love, fairness, and freedom. This simple creed is all that we need to enjoy peace on earth. The world is my country. To do good is my religion. No prophets, no priests, no Bible for me. My mind is my own church. We are all one human family, wanting love, fairness, and freedom. This simple creed is all that we need to enjoy peace on earth.
Welcome, everyone, to the 2023 Thomas Paine Day celebration. My name is Margaret Downey, and I'm the president of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, one of the co-hosts of today's event, celebrating the life of Thomas Paine. We hope you enjoyed Dan Barker's presentation of his original song, "The World is My Country." Dan wrote the song using one of Thomas Paine's most famous quotations, "The world is my country, to do good is my religion." Dan's music is available for purchase through the Freedom from Religion Foundation's website at ffrf.org. Dan Barker is the co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, which is one of 4 co-sponsors of today's event. Annie Laurie Gaylor is the other co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation. She will welcome you with the following message, which will include an exciting announcement as she represents the Thomas Paine Memorial Association as its secretary.
Thank you, Margaret. The Freedom from Religion Foundation is pleased to be a co-host of this event and to be a part of the coalition working with the Thomas Paine Memorial Association to place a monument to forgotten founder Thomas Paine in our nation's capital. And I'm excited to be able to announce momentarily the name of the individual who's agreed to become the honorary chair of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association. As Margaret noted, I'm co-president of the Freedom from Religion Foundation and also a co-founder. Today, the Freedom from Religion Foundation has more than 40,000 free-thinking members and works as a diligent state church watchdog to get religion out of government and social policy. We believe, to quote our principal founder, Ann Nicol Gaylor, that it is an advantage for an individual to be free from religion, but an absolute necessity for government to be free from religion. And we know Thomas Paine would have agreed. I'm also currently secretary and treasurer of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association. So as you can imagine, I'm very grateful for donations toward our unifying cause of a memorial to Thomas Paine that will remind our nation of the democratic, secular, egalitarian ideals that Paine stood for. And now I have the great honor of announcing the identity of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association's new honorary chair. He is United States Congressman Jamie Raskin. And it's so fitting that Congressman Raskin has become the honorary chair as a lifelong fan of Paine, who himself embodies so much of what Paine stood for. Congressman Raskin authored the congressional bill introduced in 2022 to authorize a memorial to Thomas Paine in the District of Columbia, and husbanded that bill to its successful passage in the omnibus package last December. We're also indebted to Congressman Raskin for being co-chair and co-founder of the Congressional Freethought Caucus, and we are likewise indebted to him for his role as impeachment manager after the January 6th insurrection, as well as for serving on the U.S. House Select Committee to investigate the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol. His powerful book, Unthinkable: Trauma, Truth, and the Trials of American Democracy, is a must-read. In a few minutes, you'll be hearing directly from Congressman Raskin himself. I'd like to end with my thanks to him, to Margaret Downey, president of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, to the board members of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, to our Zoom host, Judy Flattery, to the Stifle Freethought Foundation, which has been so supportive of the monument, and to all of you in attendance for making this event possible, as well as for your financial support of the Paine Memorial in Washington, D.C.
Thank you, Annie Laurie. The Center for Inquiry is also a co-sponsor of this Thomas Paine Day. Robin Blumner, the President and Chief Executive Officer of the Center for Inquiry and Executive Director of the Richard Dawkins Foundation for Reason and Science, will now deliver a welcome.
Thank you, Margaret. Hello, fellow Thomas Paine fans. As Margaret said, I'm Robin Blumner. And for those of you who don't know the Center for Inquiry, it was founded in the 1970s by people like Carl Sagan, Isaac Asimov, James Randi, and Paul Kurtz. It was founded to promote a mission of reason, science, and secularism. And who better to embody those values than Thomas Paine, the author of one of the greatest books of the Enlightenment, The Age of Reason. I find it quite gratifying how often I run across Thomas Paine's name while I'm reading books of history. And I was recently reading a biography of Samuel Adams, the Bostonian who was instrumental in promoting the cause of independence from Great Britain in the 18th century. And of course, no recounting of that tale would be complete without crediting Thomas Paine's electrifying pamphlet, Common Sense. The author of the Adams biography wrote, quote, Thomas Paine had only recently arrived in America, but overvaulted Adams in his thinking and outclassed most other colonial writers in his lucidity. Paine baldly asserted that there was something, quote, very absurd in supposing that a continent be perpetually governed by an island. Paine launched a full-out assault on monarchy and hereditary succession with his best-selling pamphlet, Common Sense, and it worked as an accelerant, igniting the call for American independence across the colonies. Thomas Paine's promotion of self-government and the Enlightenment values of reason and science are the foundation upon which the United States was built. And the Center for Inquiry is an organization that stands and fights for those values every single day. By the way, I'm also the vice president of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, and I'm humbled and honored to hold that post. And finally, I'd like to send out a huge thank you to the honorary chair of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, the Representative Jamie Raskin, who is making the prospect of a statue of Thomas Paine in the nation's capital no longer a pipe dream, but a reality.
Thank you, Robin. The Freethought Society is also pleased to be a co-sponsor of this event. To learn more about the Freethought Society and become a sponsor of our activities, please visit the Freethought Society website at ftsociety.org. I'm not only the founder and president of the Freethought Society, I'm also the president of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association. And in that capacity, I too am very pleased that Congressman Raskin has joined our team as honorary chair. It's indeed an honor to be working with him as we move forward and to hopefully unveil a Thomas Paine monument in Washington, D.C. in 2026, just in time to celebrate the 250th anniversary of the signing of the Declaration of Independence. We will be hearing from Congressman Jamie Raskin in a few minutes, but before we proceed with the program, I'm very pleased to introduce my co-host, Judy Flattery. She's also a leader in the Freethought Society's Southern California Secular Coalition Committee and is president of the Humanist Society of Santa Barbara. Thank you for helping me host this event today, Judy.
Thanks, Margaret. It is my pleasure to be co-host for today's event. Our Zoom technicians today are Dave Flattery, my spouse, also a Humanist Society board member, along with Dave Rice, the leader of the Southern California Secular Coalition. Before we begin, I have a few housekeeping items to convey. This session is being recorded for replay on social media. By joining the session, you consent to be recorded and agree to abide by the anti-harassment and code of conduct policy available for viewing at the co-sponsors' websites. For the best viewing experience, we recommend that you set your Zoom view options to speaker view. That way, you can see the speakers in full screen mode. Everyone except the co-hosts and our speakers will be muted. We will unmute you during the question and answer session and during the social hour. If you prefer not to speak or to be spotlighted when asking a question, send your questions to me, Judy Flattery, and I'm happy to represent you by repeating your question or comment. Just type "please ask" or "please say" in the chat before your comment or question. So let's start the formal program with a message from Congressman Jamie Raskin.
Hey everybody, it's Congressman Jamie Raskin from Maryland's beautiful 8th Congressional District coming at you from the Rayburn House office building this Memorial Day weekend. I know on June the 8th, we're going to be celebrating Thomas Paine Day. And as an honorary co-chair of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, it gives me great pleasure to be able to extend my greetings to everybody who's celebrating out there in America and even around the world the legacy of the great Tom Paine. So thanks to all of the groups involved. That's terrific. Greetings to Amber Quitno from the World Union of Deists, a Democrat serving on the DeKalb County board in the great state of Illinois, home to Abraham Lincoln, who was another huge fan, of course, of Thomas Paine. But I just want to thank all of you for keeping this vital legacy alive. Tom Paine was the voice of democracy and freedom and change in the interests of humanity. He was the voice of common sense, and he was the voice of the age of reason. And he said, you can't have common sense without an age of reason, and you can't have an age of reason without common sense. So I want to thank all of you for your work in helping me get passed in Congress the authorization for a memorial statue or bust to Tom Paine in Washington, D.C. He will finally receive the central place of honor and esteem and love that he deserves in the nation's capital. And I'm thrilled that the passage of this legislation also marks a great resurgence of interest in the legacy of Tom Paine. So thank you, Margaret Downey, the president of the Tom Paine Memorial Association, for your great work in helping get this legislation through, and your team. Thank you for inviting me to be part of the event today, which is so critical as we are surrounded on all sides by superstition, disinformation, misinformation, propaganda, big lies, irrationality, and to combat them, we need to have Tom Paine's great love of humanity, great commitment to common sense and science and reason. Those are the values that are going to save us from the age of Donald Trump and usher in a new age of Tom Paine and all of the great champions of democracy and freedom and reason that are out there waiting for the new age. So thank you all for keeping Paine's legacy alive. Thank you for allowing me to be part of the celebration. And I look forward to seeing all of you soon, and for us to build the Tom Paine Memorial in the federal city. Thanks, everybody.
Well, thank you, Congressman Raskin. We welcome your input as the honorary chair of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, and we are so proud to have your support as we move forward with the Washington, D.C. Thomas Paine Monument. The monument would not have become a reality without the support of Congressman Jamie Raskin and the Steeple Freethought Foundation. Well, we are at the point in the project where we need to hire a consulting firm as required by the rules and regulations of the Washington, D.C. Monument Commissions. And if you enjoy this event, we hope that you'll donate to the monument project. You know, if everyone in attendance tonight would donate just $17.76, we could be well on our way to meeting our immediate financial needs. I'll be putting a donation link into the chat, as well as all the contact information of our event co-sponsors. We are very pleased to announce that the mayor of Westchester, Pennsylvania, wrote and signed a 2023 Thomas Paine Day proclamation. She could not be with us tonight, but she sends her regrets. And Mayor DeBattista sent a proclamation for me to read. Let's see the full proclamation on screen. The proclamation states, whereas Thomas Paine, a founding father and leader of the American Revolution, peer of George Washington, James Madison, Benjamin Franklin, and Thomas Jefferson, was one of the most brilliant political philosophers of his time. And whereas he published a pamphlet entitled Common Sense, setting forth his argument in favor of American independence. And whereas the writings of Thomas Paine acknowledge the that freedom depends on people who form opinions based on reason, independently of tradition, authority, or established belief. And whereas he advocated justice for women, public education, progressive tax law, religious freedom, and preservation of world peace through arbitration of international disputes. And whereas Thomas Paine was among the earliest writers publicly to denounce slavery and was the first to call for reparations. And whereas Thomas Paine is noted for calling an end to slavery and the establishment of human rights around the world, as evidenced by his thought-provoking works, African Slavery in America, The Age of Reason, and Justice for Women. And whereas his life and work have inspired many generations of democratic thinkers in many lands, now, therefore, be it resolved, Lillian L. DeBattista, Mayor of the Borough of Westchester, does hereby proclaim June 8th, 2023 as Thomas Paine Day, and encourages the citizens of Westchester to learn more about this great historical figure. The proclamation was signed on June 6th, 2023, and I'll be picking up the original next week. And I want to thank Mayor Di Battista very much for this special document. Now, there's one more mayor we want to hear from. Stuart Wright is the mayor of Thetford, England, the birthplace of Thomas Paine. He's also the secretary of the Thomas Paine Society and curator of a new exhibition. The exhibition can be found at the Thomas Paine Hotel in Thetford. And we are also pleased to have Gies Cheetle, the owner of the Thomas Paine Hotel and Museum, speaking with the Honorable Mayor Wright. They send the following greeting as a team and together welcome you to the 2023 Thomas Paine Day.
So welcome to Thetford, birthplace of Thomas Paine Hotel here. I have with us Jez, who's the owner. I'm Stuart Wright, the secretary of the Thomas Paine Society, but also for this year I'm the mayor of Thetford, and it's a great pleasure to join you today to tell you a little bit about the work that we've been doing here in Thetford to make a little bit more of the Thomas Paine Association with Thetford, and we're looking forward to many of you visitors coming to see what we've been doing. We've put together a new exhibition within the hotel, calling it In the Footsteps of Thomas Paine exhibition. It's open anytime the hotel is. What we're trying to do there is trace the history of Paine being born in Thetford and the influences that Thetford had on him in later life. Obviously then his journey through to America, into France, back to America, and then also to look at some of the ideas. And you can see the lovely bridge behind us, paying reference to his design for the cast iron bridge, which I think is quite often overlooked. We have some film shows, some audio that complement the offer that we have on the offer here. And then we'll be looking to phase 2 to talk about the American Revolution and how Paine was involved with that as time goes by. Within the hotel, Jez will be talking about what they've done here, but we've got a large collection of murals now, which depict Thomas Paine at various stages. And we're looking forward to getting people over here to learn about that. We're encouraging school groups to come along and local societies and groups to come and see a little bit about Thetford's most famous son. But I'll hand you over to Jez now to talk about the hotel.
Okay, thank you, Stuart. My name's Jez Cheetle, and I'm the owner of this hotel. I bought this in May 2013, so we've been here 10 years now. My whole point of buying this hotel, because it was a building relating back to 1743 and was the home of Thomas Paine himself. Whilst I came here, I started learning more and more about Paine and got very, very involved with Stuart of trying to encourage more people to come and see our place. We wanted to really get something going here, so about a year ago, I suggest to Stuart that we should do a little bit more. And what we've done now, actually, is, as Stuart explained, is put an exhibition in. It's called In the Footsteps of Thomas Paine. And it's in the main building of where the corridor is, of when it dates back to those ages in 1700s. It's a fantastic exhibition. It's amazing. We've had people come in already. A gentleman arrived 2 weeks ago from Anchorage just to go through. He was here for 2 days and he went through, and all the panels, which I'm sure we'll show you, have all the information needed of his timeline. There is QR codes on there, so you can actually listen to it on your phone, or as a couple today, we're in here listening to it in their own leisure on their earphones. It's a great thing we've done here, and we do have a lot of American people on 2 United States Air Force bases only 10 minutes away from us who are supporting us in this quite wholly. We also did the opening of, about 6-7 weeks ago, and we had 120 children, American children, ages of 9 and 10, who came from Lakenheath and really, really supported the event. And we've actually had a thank you yesterday from them, and 18 pages of thank you from these young children who are now learning about Thomas Paine. How fantastic is that? So we hope you will follow us on our journey here going forward. Thank you.
I was very fortunate enough to be able to take the children round on the day that Jez was talking about, and it was lovely to see them engaged, learning more about Thomas Paine, and we're looking forward for many hundreds of more children to come and see us here. So today is June the 8th, so we wish you all a happy Thomas Paine Day.
Well, thank you, Geez, and Mayor Wright. I hope to visit Thetford again soon. A big thank you to Dave Flattery for making sure the video messages were played on cue. Thank you, Dave. Tonight's theme of highlighting the deistic life stance of Thomas Paine is going to be very educational. But to set the stage on the subject of deism, I'm pleased to introduce cartoonist and illustrator Paul Fitzgerald. He is also affectionately known as Pollock. Paul is from Manchester, England, and is the author of Paine, a fantastical visual biography. Welcome, Paul.
Hi, everybody. Thanks ever so much for inviting me along to this celebration. I'm here in Manchester in the UK, which has got some significance for Thomas Paine in that it was the intended destination of his remains when they were taken from America and brought to England. So, sadly, they never made it. Troops stopped him arriving in the city because they were so frightened that his presence, even just his remains, would help spark unrest in the country. So we even had a big parade in the city celebrating his this attempt to bring his remains and his ideas into the city. Here's this gorgeous prop that was built and paraded through the streets, an absolutely wonderful event. So yeah, we're very aware of Thomas here in the city. So having written his biography and tried to make his biography as absolutely honest as I possibly can, using only the words of the time, everything in it is verbatim, despite how kind of surreal a lot of the drawings are. I suppose I'd draw people's attention to the fact that one of the communities that have helped keep Thomas's memory alive has been the skeptics and the atheist community. And they quite often quote him saying, to argue with a man who has renounced the use and authority of reason is like administering medicine to the dead. They quite often cut the last line or last part of that quote out, where he goes on to say, or endeavoring to convert an atheist by scripture, because Thomas didn't actually really approve of hard atheism. He felt it was often the wrong direction in which society should go, because a lot of his ethics were drawn from his deist beliefs. Again, here we've got an image of what he talked about while he was writing The Age of Reason in Robespierre's horrible jail, where he says, "My own mind is my own church." And he wasn't just being metaphorical, you know, he actually was a believer. I was fascinated as somebody who loves astronomy and used to build telescopes when I was a kid. I love the fact that a lot of his deist ideas or stances were drawn from his love of astronomy. A great section of The Age of Reason is actually just an astronomy primer. He talks about the structure of the solar system and how wonderful it all is. So yeah, you know, like interesting that his deism had its roots in, if you like, physical reality and the beauty of the universe. It also influenced his political thinking when he talks in one of his lesser known works about land reform. He actually brings his religious ideas into it, saying, well, you know, like the earth belongs to humanity, and this kind of authoritarian God that the rest of you seem to believe in. He didn't issue land deeds to people, so nobody really has a right to own the earth. So interesting that it kind of slipped over into an environmental point of view from him. And of course, in his will, he was absolutely explicit that I die in perfect composure and resignation to the will of my creator, God. So absolutely, even though I'm a hardened atheist myself, I can't ignore the fact that he had, you know, a religious stance or a belief system in his life. And I think we do need to acknowledge that. So here's the final double-page spread from the book where I tried to show him basically going to heaven. The ending of his life was, I think, quite distressing, that a lot of people had abandoned him and he was being constantly harassed by these religious fanatics, getting him to accept their kind of rigid theology, which he refused to do. So here I'm trying to show him going into a kind of an almost agnostic, astronomy-based numinous heaven, where we have the eye of providence in the middle of a galaxy and Tom crossing the bridge of his own design. And of course, he's surrounded in this by lots and lots of quotes from people who said they were influenced by him, people who lived after him. You know, Carl Sagan, Walt Whitman, Clarence Darrow, loads of different influential figures who kind of, it's a sort of an agnostic heaven in that we live on in memory. We live on in memory, and this is what this image is trying to express. But it's not necessarily a literal heaven that he went to, that he's remembered in our hearts and minds, which is what we're doing today. So yeah, if anybody wants to have a look at the book, here's the web address where you can get hold of a copy and see some previews. And I'll just finish by saying cheers. Here's to celebrating the memory of Thomas Paine. Bye.
Thank you, Paul. Your art is clever, thought-provoking, and beautifully done. Thank you for sharing it with us. Our keynote speaker is coming to us live from her home office in Sycamore, Illinois. It's time to learn more about deism. Amber Quitno is a proud free-thinking deist and secular activist who is passionate about defending the wall between religion and government. She is a representative of the World Union of Deists, a member of the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and a new supporter of the Freethought Society. As a deist, she sees proof of a principal cause within nature consistent with the laws of physics, but firmly rejects revealed religion, supernatural mythology, and superstitions.
Well, that sounds very similar to my own skepticism, Judy. Amber told me that she believes that we gain a deeper understanding of the principal cause through the advancement of science, using the scientific method, logic, reason, and critical thinking skills. Amber has a bachelor's degree in technical communications with an emphasis on the biomedical industries. She also has a master's in regulatory affairs for the pharmaceutical, biotechnology, and medical device industries. During her studies, Amber took classes in philosophy and world religions as her electives. These classes sparked a deep desire to learn everything she could about theology and philosophy.
Amber claims to have read every book she could find about religion, philosophy, humanism, atheism, and American history. Her favorite book is The Age of Reason by Thomas Paine, which mirrors her own thoughts regarding revealed religion, superstitions, and supernatural mythical deities.
Amber is also an elected county board member of DeKalb County, Illinois, where she serves on the Law and Justice Committee and on the Health and Human Services Committee. Welcome, Amber Quitno.
Thank you, Margaret, for that warm welcome. It's an honor and privilege to be here tonight from my home office to celebrate Thomas Paine Day. I want to thank the Freethought Society for hosting this event to celebrate my hero, Thomas Paine. I also want to take a minute to express a humble thank you to Congressman Jamie Raskin for the welcome message introducing me, and to Bob Johnson of the World Union of Deists for his dedication to the promotion of deism and reason. I'm excited for this opportunity to speak tonight about Tom Paine's intellectual philosophy of life, deism. Tom Paine was a proud and outspoken deist who took incredible chances with his freedom and safety in order to spread the principles of deism, independence, and liberty. Many Americans and people around the world are familiar with Tom Paine's pamphlet, Common Sense, because it was the catalyst which ignited the American Revolution, or his prose, The American Crisis, that salvaged the revolution when our brave soldiers were weary, tired, hungry, bruised, and battered. But my absolute favorite book by Paine, and in general, is The Age of Reason. Within the pages of The Age of Reason, Paine wrote, "The creation speaks a universal language, independently of human speech or human language, multiplied and various as they may be. It is an ever-existing original," and I love that term, "which every man can read. It cannot be forged, it cannot be counterfeited, it cannot be lost, it cannot be altered, it cannot be suppressed. It does not depend on the will of man whether it shall be published or not. It publishes itself from one end of the earth to the other. It preaches to all nations and to all worlds. This first principle and existing original forms the deistic view of nature, of God and nature, or nature's God." It was Paine's deistic philosophy of life that empowered him with the reason, logic, and the critical thinking skills to so eloquently describe deism, and to see the inalienable rights that all human beings are born with by default through the laws of nature, without a caste or class system. Most Americans have been led to believe that our nation was founded on Christian principles, which is baffling to me because our Declaration of Independence specifically refers to nature's God, not Yahweh, not Allah, nor Jesus. Tom Paine wrote in The Age of Reason, "To assume among the powers of earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them." The phrase nature's God is deistic, not Christian. Many of our key founding fathers were deists, including Franklin, Jefferson, of course, Paine, Monroe, and Madison. When people hear that founding fathers were deists, they always ask me, "What's a deist?" When I'm asked if I'm a Christian, I answer, "No, I'm a deist." And inevitably, that is usually always followed with, "Huh? A deist? What's that?" For those that have read briefly about deism, they often think that we believe in a clockmaker God who created the world and then just stepped away and let it run itself. But this is really a simplistic and distorted view of what deism and deists really believe. We view life and nature as proof of and part of the first principle, or what many people refer to as God. We believe nature is always interacting with us and doesn't suspend physical laws in order to appease the whims of human beings who wish for this or that. I personally don't even use the term God anymore because the term is immediately associated with the Christian version of God, Yahweh or Jesus. And that's not what I mean when I'm thinking of the first principle or God. When we trace the roots of deism, we find people such as the British religious philosopher Lord Herbert Cherbury, who wrote De Religione Gentilium in 1645. This work examines Christianity and caused quite a stir by making such heretical claims as there being no such thing as original sin, that not all Christian revelations are true divine revelations, and the authority of the church doesn't deserve our faith, among many other anti-dogmatic, irreligious observations. Though Herbert brings claims to divine revelations and inspirations into question, he doesn't reject all claims, nor does he reject the idea of revelations and revealed religion as deism does. However, this type of independent thinking in religious matters, though not directly establishing deism, did lay the groundwork for deism. Other deists in this time period were Anthony Collins, John Toland, and Matthew Tyndall. Tyndall's Christianity as Old as the Creation was more in tune with Thomas Paine's The Age of Reason and Ethan Allen's Reason, the Only Oracle of Man, since the restraints of treating Christianity and the Bible in a completely objective manner were gone. By the time of the 18th century, deism was firmly established among the intellectuals of Europe and North America. Such outstanding philosophers as Descartes and Voltaire used deistic ideas as a battering ram against what they perceived as an unreasonable as unreasonable claims to divine revelations and teachings of the Bible and Christianity. In America, deists such as Tom Paine and Ethan Allen worked hard to bring deism to the people, while deists such as Thomas Jefferson and George Washington did much to promote deistic principles behind the scenes without upsetting their constituents. The majority of whom believed that by questioning Christianity, they were revolting against God, since they mistakenly still believed that God was the author of the Bible and Christianity. Traditional deism rejects revealed religion, superstitions, and supernatural mythology. Deism is not a religion, but a philosophy of life. We do not worship a God, but love nature and strive to be kind and moral people. We believe that natural laws are proof of a first principle, but reject the idea that there's a vengeful God in the sky somewhere who demands worship or suffering in order to please him. We reject the idea of original sin and magical thinking, and we embrace the latest scientific theories. We don't use the term faith in the context of our philosophy or of God, and we see that term as really the clergy's emotional manipulation tactics used to control the commoners. We encourage our children, friends, and family to question everything and use their God-given reason instead of religion. We have much in common with humanists, atheists, and pantheists, and little to nothing in common with revealed religions. We also do not share the same beliefs as Gnostics or New Age spirituality movement. We have no affiliation at all with Scientology, science of mind, power of attraction, Jewish mysticism, or other New Age pseudoscience spirituality movements. We do not believe in prophets, so-called miracles, psychics, or astrology. We do believe in astronomy, physics, biology, chemistry, and all of the natural laws. As Paine put it in The Age of Reason, and every point of view in which those things called miracles can be placed and considered, the reality of them is improbable and their existence unnecessary. They would not, as before observed, answer any useful purpose, even if they were true, for it is more difficult to obtain belief to a miracle than to a principle evidently moral without any miracle. Moral principle speaks universally for itself. Miracle could be but a thing of the moment and seen but by a few. After this, it requires a transfer of faith from God to a man to believe a miracle upon man's report. As mystery and miracle took charge of the past and the present, prophecy took charge of the future and routed the tenses of faith. It wasn't sufficient to know that what had been done, but what would be done. The supposed prophet was the supposed historian of times to come. And if he happened in a shooting with a longbow of 1,000 years to strike within 1,000 miles of the mark, the ingenuity of posterity could make it point blank. And if he happened to be directly wrong, it was only to suppose that God had repented himself and changed his mind. What a fool do fabulous systems make of man. As deism continues to grow, we hope to see deism reason centers being established around the world. Our end goal is to have as many deist reason centers as needed to educate people about deism and to serve the needs of people. DRCs will be dogma and ritual free and will be staffed by knowledgeable deists who can answer any questions people may have about deism. There will be libraries containing books, periodicals, and other media about deism, as well as about science, math, and history. Again, I want to thank you so much for this opportunity to help really explain deism a little more in depth than what you can find on a quick internet search. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you, Amber. That was a fascinating presentation. We're going to take a short break before you continuing with the question and answer portion of this event. When we notice a raised hand in your Zoom box, your microphone will be unmuted and we will spotlight you at the time. If you prefer not to be spotlighted or to speak, another option is for you to send your questions or comments through the chat. Judy Flattery or I will happily represent you by repeating your question or commentary. Just please type, please ask, or please say in the chat and send your message to my attention or to Judy Flattery. During this short break, please enjoy the song Liberty Tree, performed by James Clue. James is an excellent entertainer and a friend to the Thomas Paine Memorial Association. If you need to leave the room during this short break, please turn your computer volume way up so you don't miss a word of this beautiful song. We thank James Clue for sending us this wonderful recording.
In a chariot of light from the regions of day, the goddess of liberty came. 10,000 celestials directed the way, and hither conducted the day. A fair budding branch from the gardens above, where millions with millions agree. She brought in her hand as a pledge of her love, the plant she named Liberty Tree. The celestial exotic struck deep in the ground, like a native it flourished and bore. The fame of its fruit drew the nations around to seek out this peaceable shore. Unmindful of names or distinction they came, for freemen like brothers agreed. With one spirit endued, they one friendship pursued, and the temple was Liberty Tree. Beneath this fair tree, like the patriarchs of old, their bread and contentment they ate, unvexed with the troubles of silver and gold, the cares of the grand and the great. With timber and tar they old England supplied, and supported her power on the sea. Her battles they fought without getting a groat, for the honor of Liberty Tree. But hear, O ye swains, 'tis a tale most profane, how all the tyrannical powers, kings, commons, and lords, are uniting amain to cut down this guardian of ours. From the east to the west, blow the trumpet to all, through the land let the sound of it flee. Let the far and the near all unite with the cheer in defense of our Liberty Tree.
So welcome back, everyone. I so enjoyed presenting the music of my friend, James Clue. For 4 decades, James has offered private voice and music lessons to adults and children. In Utah and online, James also teaches a course in songwriting and music therapy. James has released recordings of his original music, but his collection of unfinished musical projects includes a group of songs inspired by or otherwise connected to Thomas Paine. We will now begin a 15-minute question and answer segment. I'll watch the time closely as we have quite a few impressive audience members with us tonight. I see a raised hand somewhere. Ah, there it is. We have a raised hand from Peter Hall.
If maybe you could give a little something about the Association of Electorally Elected Officials. I'm a member of that as city councilor in a small town in Eastern Oregon. And I know there's other ones. I'm sure we're asking another. So very important thing that for people who are secular, who are elected officials, to stand up and say so, and maybe give a little something about this organization.
Well, thank you, Peter. Are you asking for more information about the Thomas Paine Memorial Association?
But yes, okay. But I want to say that as far as with Thomas Paine, what you're talking about, his beliefs is how important it is to have the secular elected officials you could talk about as part of, Thomas Paine, what he wanted to put forward, or founders, because we're all secular elected officials. So just maybe talk a little bit about that. If somebody has something, that you have some information on that you could sort of spread to others.
Well, you'd want to look into the Freethought Caucus. It's a congressional caucus started by Jamie Raskin, and there are about 21 congressional members already involved. But if your representative is not a member of the Congressional Freethought Caucus, we urge you to tell them about the Congressional Freethought Caucus and get them to join. We would love that the concept be accepted by all parties as something very, very important to maintain our secular constitution, and to we have also provided speakers to the Congressional Freethought Caucus. So Andrienne addressed them. We've had several scientists address the Congressional Freethought Caucus. And Andrew Seidel, who talked about Christian nationalism. So please try to get your representative, everyone listening, get your representative to join the Congressional Freethought Caucus.
Yes, I think Peter brings up a good point in that I just recently read an article where it talked about that our representatives on the whole are much more religious than the constituency that they represent. So making our voices heard is very important, and connecting with them and letting them know that we're here and we vote and we care.
And another organization that you can join is the Secular Coalition for America. And that is a lobbying arm for the secular community. They teach you how to lobby. They conduct lobby days. They have a lot of information when you have something of concern. They will represent you with your representative in Congress. So please join the Secular Coalition for America. It's easy to find. I'll put a link in the chat as soon as I'm able.
Okay, I see we have another question from Judah Freed.
Margaret, it's good to see you again after being in New Rochelle for the joining of the Thomas Paine Center. For those of you that don't know, the Thomas Paine National Historical Association is based in New Rochelle on what's left of Thomas Paine's original farm that was given to him by there was a confiscated Tory farm that was given to him by the state of New York. And their website, thomaspaine.org, has probably the most complete collection of all of his works, letters, essays, everything that I believe is extant anywhere. However, there is an effort right now to put together an even more collected works of Thomas Paine. It's an international effort. And Margaret, do you remember when they said they're going to have that done? Was it going to be next year or the year after?
I think it's next year if all goes well. The person in charge of that particular effort is Gary Burton. He's the president of the Thomas Paine National Historical Association, and they're based in New Rochelle, New York. Wonderful efforts by Gary to look at all the writings that were pen names of Thomas Paine. He had favorite pen names, and so they're trying to show proof that these particular articles, essays, letters, etc., were actually Thomas Paine by using electrical diagnosis of the style, and praise AI, I guess, for having this at our fingertips. But if you're ever in New Rochelle, please visit the Thomas Paine Museum and Cottage. Right now, they are hosting the mayor of New Rochelle, who's presenting a Thomas Paine Day proclamation. They wanted to get the film over to me, but I don't have it yet. The event is still going on, I believe.
Yeah, so I think it's important to realize that Thomas Paine crosses so many barriers and so many boundaries for people. And if you do a web search for him, there's not thousands of items. There's millions. And I think he's more popular now than he was during his own lifetime, which is saying a lot. So anyway, good to see you again. I'm muting.
Thanks for logging on. I appreciate it.
I'm glad to be here. I would not have missed it.
Clearly. Do we have any other questions? Any questions for our keynote speaker? Or any other comments that anyone would like to make? Okay,
I see a question in the comments where somebody asked if deists believe that God created the universe, and then somebody answered that they believe God created the universe, but only that, and he does not care about what happened after that. So if you don't mind, could I address that question and answer?
Go ahead. Yes.
We believe in a first cause, in an original cause or creator, but again, it's not a God in the most well-known definition of a God. It just something, we came from something, and there is organization, and we do not believe that this particular first cause is a he or a she, or that it has human emotions like caring. It's pretty much like physics. It is just an exact going to happen regardless of your feelings, regardless of what your desires are, other than what you do with your life within the confines of the physical laws. So traditional deists don't view a God as a he or she in that manner. And as for an afterlife, which is usually the next question after do we believe that a God created the world, I believe that we live on in our children and our DNA. And if you don't have children, you live on in memories. That's the typical deistic viewpoint.
In the atheist world, we say your legacy is your afterlife.
Yes. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, we have a question from T. Fields.
Yes. Did the deists regard Jesus as a philosopher, a prophet, or what? Did they see him as someone like Plato, Aristotle, or Socrates, or Zarathustra, for example? Or did they see him as just a fictitious character, or what?
Most traditional deists view Jesus as a character, a fictional character in a story, full of fantastical, magical powers, and not as an actual prophet. Or we don't believe in prophets, so we don't believe that he would be. I'm sure there was a human being by the name of Jesus or Jesus at the time, but we don't believe that this character was real, or that any of the things claimed were possible.
Okay. Dave Rice, you have a question?
I do. Thank you so much for your presentation, Amber. I wasn't really that familiar with deism, other than just some, sort of faint. We've all heard that many of our founding fathers were deists, but beyond that, we didn't really know that much. So I'm curious, from what you've said, it sounds like you're basically lining up with humanism, or most of the values and beliefs of humanism, other than perhaps this original first cause point.
Yes,
is that fairly accurate?
Yes, that's pretty much what differentiates us from humanists. Is just, but everything else we share in common. We just do see a principal cause underlying, or beginning. If there, I don't even believe in a beginning necessarily, but I don't think we have the adequate words to describe a beginning.
And just as a follow-up, how large is your group, would you say? Are there organizations around the country, or how does that look?
Bob Johnson is on here. If you could unmute, how many do we have in the World Union of Deists? And we do have representatives around the world. And we are looking to increase awareness of what deism really is, as an alternative out there for those that reject religion, but still feel something with nature and a first cause or God, if that's how they're more comfortable referring to it.
So let me follow up. So you're saying that as a deist,
Mm-hmm.
the Big Bang theory, like it all started at the Big Bang, you're okay with that, but then you go one step further and say, well, something caused that Big Bang. Is that what you mean by first cause?
Yes, that's it. That is it in a nutshell.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
And it's similar to what Buddhists say, that God is unknowable. So don't waste your time worrying about that.
It's certainly not a sky daddy up there demanding worship and suffering. And honestly, the most cruel and horrendous things I've ever read were probably in the Bible. Just shocking by what I read. I was mortified, and there's no part of, okay, so there's a few grains of loving messages mixed in there, really just to secure a trauma bond of terror and inhumanity, to question anything in it. But any proof I needed to be a secular deist was contained in that book, and then in the Age of Reason.
So I didn't know if Bob Johnson is going to, is on or able to address the question about the size, but you know, as somebody who's very interested in having an enlarged tent of humanists and like-minded folks, it seems like we pretty much align on nearly everything, and it would seem like it would make sense for us to be working together as much as possible.
Absolutely.
On things. So I'm just curious about that point.
Yeah, Bob Johnson, are you on, Bob?
Hello, can you hear me?
There you
are.
Okay.
So Bob, he was asking, how many members do we have with the World Union of Deists?
Right now, just shy of about 2,000.
Okay.
About 2,000?
Yes.
And that's globally?
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have any idea roughly how many are in the US?
Probably about 13 or 1,400.
Okay. All right, great. Yeah, we should definitely look to connect where we can.
Absolutely.
And I think deists have a wonderful outlook about nature, where with a deistic look that God is nature, the language of God speaks through nature, we could convince people that ruining nature, polluting, being unconcerned about our environment is an insult to God. That I think deists could promote environmentalism as a means of making more clear that that established organized religions aren't really doing a service to nature's God. Nature's God is what appears in our Declaration of Independence and other documents. Nature's God.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Thank you for logging in, Bob. So nice to hear your voice.
Thanks for having me.
Oh, sure. I see a raised hand, but there's no name associated to that raised hand. It's just sort of cryptic.
Yeah, Margaret, are you there?
Yes.
Yeah, my apologies. I don't know what happened. My name is Gary Taylor, and my apologies for not being able to get that changed for some reason. Anyway, I have a question. I think I'm seeing religion, particularly Christianity. People are leaving that, in droves because it just doesn't make sense. And Amber, you mentioned something interesting about deist centers.
Yeah.
I'm more curious about that. How will these people who lead the deist centers be trained? Is there quote unquote a seminary type of thing we're looking at in the future? I think some sort of message needs to get out because right now people are searching for something, and at least I think deism has that something in a God type of figure, if you want to call God.
Yes.
And so I'm more curious about that. Has anything started moving in that direction, or because people are searching and they're not finding answers in traditional religions?
We're starting to really get the word out about deism to go on to as many platforms as we can and look for those who can join forces with us to provide the funding. We are looking to really reach those that are leaving Christianity and the established religions that label themselves as nuns, N-O-N-E-S, for religion, but they still have that yearning for some type of connection and a natural based, connection there. So we are looking to collaborate and really, I'm going to be starting forums and getting as much, collaboration as possible with the secular coalitions and letting it be known that we're out here and that we have much more in common with humanists and atheists than one would think.
And Unitarians. Yes.
You're welcome.
Yeah, very good.
Let's see.
Raised hand. Riza?
Hello, my name is Riza. Actually, my question is about the previous question. It's related to previous question. I'm living in Canada, Toronto, and I want to know about, is there any, for example, population in Deism in here? Do you know any members or membership in here?
Are you wondering deists in Canada?
Yeah, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have had some reach out to me from Canada in the chats from the World Union of Deists Facebook page. So we're really trying to grow there, and any pointers and help that you could give would be greatly appreciated.
And I did put a link to the World Union of Deists in the chat, along with links to all of the co-sponsors and some of the other groups we've been talking about. I see David Carter.
Thank you. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
First, thank you all for hosting this event. It is wonderful to meet some new people here. Margaret, of course, I've met before at both the Center for Inquiry and Freedom from Religion Foundation conventions, which I intend to go to this October too. It's a wonderful place to talk with people in person. I just wanted to say that I had the pleasure of staying at the Thomas Paine Hotel in Thetford, England, coincidentally on May 6th of this year, which was the coronation date for Charles III. And of course, when we know what Mr. Paine wrote about in Common Sense, monarchies, it was just a funny irony. But Yez and I had a very nice time together. He showed me around town. Of course, he didn't mention the statue, but there is a gold-plated statue there, as there is in Paris. And I also got to that this year too. So I've done the statues in Europe. But anyway, it's a nice place. If you're going to be in England, London, it's like a 2-hour train ride out from London. So thanks again. Maybe I'll see you at some of those conventions.
Oh, that's great. And we can only promise that there will be a statue of Thomas Paine in Washington, D.C. Excuse my cough. I'm on the East Coast, so there's a lot of smoke in the air. We're going past the 15 minutes that I was allowing for the question and answer. But if there's it's been so interesting. If there's anyone else that likes to ask a question, do so now. Is there anything?
I see one.
Okay.
I see one from a Brian Riversall. His question was, does deism perceive the universe to have an absolute morality created by that first cause, i.e. good and evil is locked into the essence of reality? No, absolutely not. We do not believe in original sin or that good and evil is locked into the essence of reality. In that context, believe your actions, your thoughts, your actions, your
choices,
your morality, your integrity, your choices create that. So I wanted to address that. Sorry.
Do deists have a stance on free will?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. We believe in free will. We believe in sovereign, independent free will. We do not believe in predestiny, that there's something up there pulling puppet strings and that I don't know. I mean, the mental gymnastics that it takes my mind to even perceive what they teach in the Bible is too much for me. I don't even understand how they went from point A to point Z, but yeah.
Yes, having people read the Bible is a very effective way of creating atheists.
Yes, it certainly is. Yeah. Yes. Not just listening to the little snippets that the priest or the preacher gets up there and reads, but to read the entire Bible.
And deism could have prevented a lot of child abuse, in my opinion.
Oh my goodness. And mental anguish and the trauma, religious trauma is very real. And it's difficult to come out of a dogmatic indoctrination situation and have the free will and the courage to face your own fears of an eternal hell, if you even dare to think and to accept what your mind is telling you is actually reality and reason. So it takes a lot of courage, and we want to be here to support those that are looking for an alternative to that.
Well, I'm going to stop the question and answer segment so that we can move on to the social hour. If we did not get to you or your question, please note that you can write a question into the chat, but put your email address in there as well so we can get an answer for you and send it along through your email address. So Amber, will you be able to stay through the social hour?
I sure will. Yes, I'd be happy to.
Great, great. But before we move to the social hour, I have some remarks of appreciation. First, thank you, Judy, for a wonderful job co-hosting this event with me. Earlier, I placed a link to the Humanist Society of Santa Barbara in the chat, and Judy produces a wonderful and informative newsletter, and she is also host to many exciting live and online programs. Past Humanist of Santa Barbara programs are available on their YouTube channel. The YouTube channel link is also in the chat. And thank you, Dave Flattery, for providing us with your excellent Zoom expertise. Dave Rice, we appreciate you being the attendee monitor. A big thank you to James Clue for sending his song Liberty Tree to use as our break entertainment. And thanks also to Dan Barker for singing the song The World Is My Country to kick off the event. This production would not have been possible without the sponsorship of the Freethought Society, Center for Inquiry, the Freedom from Religion Foundation, and the Thomas Paine Memorial Association. And we are also grateful for the encouraging words conveyed by Congressman Jamie Raskin, as well as all the spokespersons who represented the co-sponsors of this event. Big thanks to our friends from across the pond who participated through video. Cheerio, Mayor Wright, Cheese, and Paul. And great appreciation goes to Amber Quitno for delivering the keynote presentation about deism. It was fascinating, Amber. If you're not staying for the social hour, we thank you for attending the 2023 Thomas Paine Day. And remember, as Thomas Paine told us, we have it in our power to begin the world again. Let the social hour begin. Cheers, everyone. Now I see that we have someone very special in the audience. I see our sculptor who has been selected for the creation of the Thomas Paine Washington, D.C. monument. Zenos Frudakis is joining us from his studio in Glenside, Pennsylvania. Zenos, please unmute yourself and tell us what's going on there.
Well, the atmosphere, as you know, is smoky and heavy, and we're choking. We're all become chain smokers.
Oh my goodness.
It's hard to see with the fluorescence.
Wow, look at that. That looks awesome.
7 feet tall.
Wow.
So it's a little over life size. There's the common sense is over here. Common sense. Let's see, it says inhabitants of America and so on. And then on this side, there's the feather pen. I had to make the piece general because I didn't know where it was going to go. So it's not specific to a location. Somewhere in Washington isn't very specific. So but I think it's the essence of him as a writer and a thinker and somebody kind of in movement, someone active. I have the costume here that I had hired someone to make an authentic costume. See, it's right here. Good for Halloween, but then it's scary to the English. And that's custom made. So that I have a model that wears it and poses. I've moved away from it for a little bit because we've gone through this long process of congressional and Washington, what should I say, Margaret?
Paperwork.
Bureaucracy.
Yeah, inertia. No, we're moving slowly. We started as hares and then turned into turtles, and I think at some point we'll go back to being hares. But so I've been working on a couple other 8-foot figures and some big animals for a zoo and some other things, and the studio's crowded. But the nice thing about moving away from a piece and coming back to it, something Titian used to do with his paintings, put them he'd face them, turn them to the wall, and then come back a few months later. You see things fresh. You get accustomed to it otherwise, like when you listen to a sound over a long period of time, and that's why you don't hear it as much. Like my cat meowing or something. But so I'm seeing some things that I want to change in the drapery, and so it's nice to come back to it. It got the little it's exciting, when you're away from it, and distance makes the heart grow fonder or something. But,
well, does anyone in the audience have a question for Zeno?
you have a question? Oh, I was thinking earlier about the deist thing. I wonder how much Spinoza influenced deism with his pantheism and his idea of nature and physics. Sics, what we knew before evolution and other sciences. I think that was nature was important. But anyway, it still is. But
there is a question in the chat asking if the quill pen is vandal proof.
Well, we could have electrified. It's actually a turkey feather. Benjamin Franklin liked the turkey instead of the eagle. Here. I would probably make some extra pens just in case.
Yeah, right.
But it's going to be. It depends on how high a base pedestal it's on. If it's on a high pedestal, I was thinking if we had a moat with sharks or alligators or something. But I think it's most times people don't bother figures unless they have a kind of homicidal. You're attacking a person, even though it's bronze or let's say marble. And most people don't do that unless they have that kind of desire. I don't know if I've had a piece or two that has been spray painted. That doesn't happen often. But on bronze, you can clean it. You can patina it. So if you're thinking of something like this being broken, I would have a rubber mold made. The whole piece is going to have a rubber mold, so someone could hit it with a truck or and it can be redone. But So they'll be able to make the pen. In fact, maybe we should have the pen as a fundraiser. And,
Oh, that's a
Yeah, that's a great idea.
if they really sign a check, they get a pen.
Good idea.
So I'm filling out the body right now. I understand he was somewhat slender. Margaret, you remember the last time you saw Tom Paine? Tom, he's not a heavy, he wasn't corpulent in the affluent, corpulent sense that was somewhat popular, right? He was, he had a kind of leaner look, did he not?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm trying to keep that lean and hungry look that Cassius had and he had.
Looks like Judah's got his hand up.
Yeah.
For a question, Judah? Oh, we need
Hi, Jen, it's good to see you again.
Yes.
If you remember, we had a conversation in New Rochelle at the Thomas Paine Center about the making his face closer to what Thomas Paine really looked like. I can't tell from the neon lights whether or not you've done that or not.
It's better. It's going to get better. I need a little time. I've had trouble getting him to come into pose, but
what, you don't believe in the afterlife? You can't go?
No, not at all. But I think that there are paintings and drawings and that kind of thing. I think there's a shadow sketch and you can see his jaw and all of that. But I think I don't think a first-rate painter painted him, which makes it a little more difficult for me. And wasn't Washington and Jefferson and Franklin all were sculpted by a first-rate sculptor, Houdin, French sculptor. But,
from what I gather, I think probably the most pronounced feature on his face was probably his nose.
Yes, and that it is true. In fact, we could sell that as a fundraiser. But it is prominent here. I didn't want to make it a grotesque or exaggerated. I don't need to because it's already large. Otherwise it turns into a caricature. I know there's a painting that I think it's thought is closer to what he probably looked like. Is it a Peel painting?
There were several hanging up in the museum at the Thomas Paine Center that I noticed.
Okay, if you can get those to me.
They're in New Rochelle. I can't necessarily remove them.
Oh, okay.
I'm always sending pictures of portraits and other things that I find in books and other things. I always send them to Zenos because the more we accumulate, the more we can guess at what he actually looked like. And his nose, like all of us, changes in time. My nose is longer than when I was 30. Now that I'm 73. So, there's things that have changed on people's faces, and it's hard to capture those things, especially when you're looking at a historical figure that didn't have cameras available. So
Yes.
relied on artists to do portraits and things. We
And
even
Margaret?
Yes.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Go ahead. I was going to say Beth has a question in the chat about has a location been determined yet, and I thought it might be helpful if you wanted to just give a brief update on that piece and the process here for folks.
Was that for me? Where we're
Yes.
okay.
Yeah.
As I said, when I was talking about the Thomas Paine Memorial Association earlier, we are at the process of getting a consulting firm, and that is a $100,000 expense, but it must happen. And we are looking forward to having some money to work with. As we pay that, it's a very expensive endeavor, but they have promised with that contract, they will identify 20 sites in Washington, D.C. and or its environs to determine where a Thomas Paine monument could be. Then it's narrowed down to 6, and then it's narrowed down to 2. And then we present in front of the commissioners of several organizations in Washington, D.C. that oversee monuments. I was told by one commissioner, you're asking for prime land in Washington, D.C. Now you're going to have to work for it. So work indeed is ahead of us.
So Margaret, we met with the park people, and we've gotten okays all with the Congress, the House, the Senate, the President of the United States. I think they've all signed off, right?
Yes.
And the Park Service, when we met with them, they told us that you're part of a very elite group that have gotten permission to put a sculpture in this area because there's so many sculptures already. I think in the next 2 years, or something like 4 to 6, and this was one of them. So we're fortunate to have that. We've actually got, I think, the big okays, in terms of passing the Congress and all of that, and the president, and so the Park Service is working with us. When we met with them, and I think Margaret can attest to this. We had a sense of a real positive response from the people that run it.
So many people think that this monument is long overdue. And I imagine raising this statue on a huge pedestal, because one of the requests from Jamie Raskin was that we have a lot of words on the monument, whether it's on the base or on the pathways or on benches. I'm imagining we have a monument in some kind of park-like situation where we can have an actual liberty tree as part of the monument area, and benches for people to sit down and ponder what the words of Thomas Paine meant. And that's a vision I have. But of course, the site is going to be determined by this consulting firm, and we'll have better guidance by then.
Yeah.
Yes. I know David Carter's got his hand up.
Can I say
I'm sorry,
something?
Judy.
Can I say something about that, about the concept? My idea has been in terms of the writing, and Jamie is not a sculptor, so he wouldn't know. If you have a very high pedestal, it's hard to see the sculpture. Another way to get a lot of writing on is to have the writing go slant up towards the sculpture from a lower area to a high, and have almost like spokes of a wheel where he's in the center, and each spoke can be one can be crisis, quotes from crisis, another one could be quotes from common sense, another one from reason. And so you cover him in the round, in a sense, you get the whole Thomas Paine and his writing without isolating him from people. You don't want to have it too far away. Not only would it be harder to see him and to interact with him, but it's harder to get photos with him, because if you want to you get in there and here's a picture of you next to a tall base, and if you
right.
Because if people want to see themselves in the photo, you got to stand back, to get the whole base of the sculpture. Then they become insignificant. They get up close enough so you can see the person with the sculpture. Now you're photographing the base and maybe his shoes.
Yeah, very good.
It's important to keep it low, and once we see the site, we can think about other possibilities. But I think that's one idea that I've had a few design ideas since I've seen thousands and thousands of sculpture fountains. We've made over 100 of our own around the world, so I know a lot about that aspect of it. And I think it'd be nice if we make something unique, but words have to be part of him because that's who he is. He was if he was an athlete, we'd have him running in his little shorts and his Nikes, and if he was something else, but he was a writer, and I think that's essential. I say he's a writer. He was a disciple of Ben Franklin and the Enlightenment. He's an Enlightenment person, and maybe there's some place in there that we can create something I can create something metaphorically that has to do with the Enlightenment. Is the metaphor along with the words, and maybe the words can be lit, maybe through some, and there's different things that can be done. But I think that when you're an artist, we want to create metaphor.
Yeah. And also, I was wondering, what process happens next? Is this that you've carved this and then you cast it like in bronze? This is clay. Can you tell us about what the process is to turn it into?
Some of this plastic was used to make the Lincoln Memorial, and was used to make a lot of the pieces you see Washington by James O. Frazier, and I have some St. Gaudens clay, but I have a lot of different prominent sculptors plastic. It gets passed down. It's an old Italian clay. It hasn't been made in like 50 years, so to get it. Like when I die, someone's gonna have to take it out of my hands. But I have, it's very responsive. So I have great old tools from sculptors. There's a tradition, people who've sculpted many of the colonial figures that you see in Washington, and this will probably be near them. I have their clay and their tools. So I love that history part of it for me.
That's awesome.
So you work with clay first. The clay is soft. It never gets hard. It's not like water clay, like Rodin used the water clay, but then that dries. You have to constantly wet it, every day or two. You have to cover it with cloths, wet cloths. Today they use plastic too. So you put rubber over the sculpture once it's finished, and put plaster over that to hold it in place. It's called a mother mold because the plaster holds it like a mother holds a child. Keeps the rubber from flopping around. And then you take off the mold, and then the clay gets knocked down so it can be used again by people after I'm gone, or I'm dead and not moving anymore. And then you have to pour wax into the rubber mold. And once that hardens, you take the wax and dip it in a ceramic material so that hardens over it. So when you heat up the whole thing, the ceramic doesn't melt, but the wax melts out. It's called lost wax process, and you pour the bronze in over the top, and then the bronze takes the place of where the wax was.
So we've got a question.
So there's more.
We got a question, Judy, from. Oh, I'm sorry. We got a question from David Carter. He's been waiting, and also Harriet put a comment in on making a donation. Margaret, it's saying that the form there doesn't enable anybody outside of the U.S. to donate.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So you may want to give her some guidance there.
Well, we take checks.
Just put something in the chat that says how that can be sent, perhaps.
Okay, I'll try to find it.
And David, go ahead. Judy, did you ask him to unmute?
So can you hear me?
Oh yeah, there you go.
Okay, great. Thanks. Well, I want to endorse what Margaret said about having some sort of a pedestal underneath the statue. That's what they did both in Thetford and in Paris, and it is a place where we can use. Well, there's just a lot of different things. I would urge people to make sure you get photographs of those other statues and see what they've already done. They've got common sense, age of reason, rights of man, friend of the world type stuff on there. Also, if you get it up a little ways, then you don't have to worry a little less about vandalism and people stealing the quill or whatever. The 24 karat gold on both the Thetford and Paris statues it's just like the statues look like new, which is kind of really very interesting. I asked the guys about that. They said that's original over there, and it certainly stands out. I understand what you're saying about getting everything in a picture, but I think it's more important for people to get a little sense of his writings first. And you can, these days cameras are so good, they can get both the statue in.
Sure, but you can also have a very low pedestal and still get a lot of writing in there. And as Margaret's suggesting, you can either have it in an area walking up to it. I'm suggesting a very low pedestal, because pedestals are a little bit more of 19th, 18th century. They're earlier. Today, and a lot of my sculptures at public places have very low or no pedestal, just because it seems almost kind of elite to have it up on a pedestal, almost like a person is. He was special, but we can do it. We can get some height on him without. And there is, again, with this base, I'm not giving you a design by speaking to you, but there are ways at the end of this spokes I'm thinking of, where you have a space where people aren't just going to be able to approach it, that if we want to keep them a little bit distant from it. This is going to be reinforced with the fingers around it. It's not going to be easy to take off. To knock it off.
I agree with the lighting. I agree with the lighting at night. I think that should be worked into the plan.
Yeah.
And one other point. Robin Blumner, I guess, mentioned it on the sighting thing. There's some very protected spaces in DC, so it's probably not going to go right next to the Washington Memorial, that center core area. But the area around the Thomas Jefferson Memorial is less classified. It's not, and because of the close connection between Paine and Jefferson and their thinking, I would urge, the folks working on siting to think about that area around the Washington Memorial, not the Washington, the Jefferson Memorial.
Right, right. Well, we will not have a lot of choice. Area 1 is already filled. We cannot get in Area 1, which is around the mall. So, we're going to have to depend on our consulting firm to tell us the 20 options and then go from there. There's a couple more people in the Zoom I wanted to get to, but I first wanted to mention that the reason that Ferd statue of Thomas Paine and the Paris statue of Thomas Paine is gold is because Napoleon Bonaparte said, there should be a golden statue of Thomas Paine in every city in the universe.
So when the St. Gordon sculpture was made gold, was gold leafed, I think it cost over $70,000. That was a while ago. It's probably a lot more now, even as thin as it is. Rose, do you remember, Margaret, when we talked to the park people, they mentioned that there is an area between the train station in Washington and the Capitol where there are more colonial figures, and that would be a nice area, and that's not outside of our, of this, as you said, well, the Area 1 is filled, but that was an available area, so that's what I'm hoping. It would be a good place. People come into the train station, and if they walk over towards the Capitol, they'll go right by him. So
right. Well, Zenos, it's been wonderful to see you, and I just adore this statue. I adore you.
Sure. Well, thank you. Are you back from visiting my ancestors in Greece? It's nice to have you back.
Oh, thank you.
Zenos, real quick before you go, I wanted to answer your question about Spinoza and Deism.
Yes.
So Spinoza did influence Deism. Spinoza was kind of a mix. I would say he was a pandeist.
That's what I said. Yes.
Pandeist, yeah. So he also Einstein was also pantheist deist, and Spinoza played a big part in all of that. Einstein actually was quoted saying that if he ever had any idea of God, it would be like a Spinoza's God.
Yeah, he likes Spinoza.
Yeah.
Well, I was going to try to catch 2 of the board members of the Thomas Paine Memorial Association, but I see that they have logged off.
I actually need to log off as well, Margaret. I'm so sorry, but I have 12-year-old twin boys.
Yes.
And yeah, I need to get them ready for bed. So, but it was a pleasure and an honor being here. Thank you so much for the opportunity. And I look forward to doing more with the Freethought Society and all of the secular coalitions.
Thank you, Amber. It was wonderful having you today.
You guys have a great evening, and I'm sure we will talk soon. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
All right, bye-bye.
And I want to give a shout out to all the people that logged on from American Humanist Association and all the people that logged on from the Washington area humanists, great friends of ours, and hopefully they'll help us raise money and raise some interest in getting a statue right there where their headquarters is located in Washington, D.C. Look them up on Meetup or on the internet. And anyone else would like to speak?
Just a shout out to the members of the Humanist Society of Santa Barbara who showed up. Thanks, guys.
And any parting words, Zenos, or anyone else?
Well, my parting words are: we have an exciting project, and I think we're part of something that will hopefully influence thought in Washington and locally and hopefully internationally in the direction of common sense and reason.
And we sure need that.
Yes.
Well, thank you, everyone. It was such a joy to be with you today on 2023's Thomas Paine Day. If you would like to contact me about your city celebrating Thomas Paine Day in 2024, I'll be happy to work with you on writing a proclamation. And the more proclamations we have, the more interest we will get from the public. So thank you so much for being a part of this celebration of Thomas Paine's life. And I'll say good night.
Good night, everyone.
Good
Thank
night.
you for attending.
Goodbye, everyone.
Bye.